Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a video that is probably my most requested video, so it's finally here. Haha! This is my complete collection of all of my Star Wars Expanded Universe books. This is All My Books Expanded Universe Edition. I got this idea from Dan Murrell, who has this series called All My Movies, and I did this once with a Star Trek video, which was lots of fun, and I didn't do this with the canon because I just ranked all the canon novels, so I basically went through all of them. I might eventually do the book do the video just for completion's sake, but next is this video on all of the EU books that I have, and actually I was very surprised that the number is much lower than I anticipated. That's because of a couple reasons. One, I actually do not own most of the New Jedi Order books. And that's because when I read the New Jedi Order, I read it between 2017 and about May 2017 through about October of 2018. I didn't read them. It didn't take me that long to read them only. I was reading a bunch of other novels. As you see on my channel, I read all the genres, or not all the genres, but a lot of genres all at once. So it took me a while to read through them. But when I was reading through them, I was just borrowing my brother-in-law's copies. For one, I didn't particularly have a good job at the time because I was in high school and beginning college, and also because he owned all of them and he was willing to let me borrow them, which I very much appreciate. So I don't really have the New Jedi Order series, but I've read all of them, loved a lot of them, didn't like some of them, but there were some that I loved, some that I hated, and then some that were in between. So I got all the spectrum. But as a whole, I'm really a big fan of the New Jedi Order. But and then also there's some of the like middle grade books, like the Jedi Apprentice series that I read 10, 20 years ago, not 20 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, and I just don't own them anymore, and I don't remember what happened to them. But I did read them. So but this is my current collection. So I'll go through, I won't spend a lot of time on each book unless I really want to, but overall this is going to be a liked it, didn't like it, like a thumbs up, thumbs down type thing, and I'll just go through and give vague, easy thoughts. First book here, The Approaching Storm by Alan Dean Foster. Did not like this book. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace by Terry Brooks. Okay adaptation, doesn't really add that much, but it was okay. Next we have Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. This is one of the best books in the EU I can recognize. It's not one of my favorites necessarily because I don't like necessarily the dark books, but it's a very excellent book. Next we have Dynasty of Evil, which I cannot find the hardcover for anywhere. It's so hard to find the hardcover of this one. And then I have a paperback of Path of Destruction. I don't have the paperback of the middle book. I have actually the hardcover of it, which I'll talk about later. I really enjoyed Path of Destruction. Thought it was a solid book. I thought Rule of Two was pretty good, and I thought Dynasty of Evil was meh. So let's go on to a sleeper book. This is a book that not many people know about, not many people talk about, not many people have read it, but it's an amazing book. That is Knight Errant by John Jackson Miller. Seriously, well worth the book. One of the most deep, not theological, philosophically deep Star Wars books out there. Very good Star Wars book. All right, next I have Annihilation, which was fun, but I actually don't remember too much from it because it just felt like just a little adventure. Then we have Fatal Alliance. It was a weird book, but I enjoyed the atmosphere that the Old Republic books had. They all had this very specific atmosphere, kind of like the High Republic books in the canon have an atmosphere. The Old Republic's books did, and the atmosphere in this was great. It didn't leave a lot that really stuck in my mind. And I have virtually the exact same thing to say about Deceived. I liked the atmosphere. It was a very fun read at the time. Did not stick with me. Then I have a book that I think is probably going to get me in trouble because I have Revan, which I did not like. I did not like where they took him. I didn't like how his story ended here. I did not like the whole purpose behind it, and I did not like a lot of the stuff. The really only thing I liked about this book was the opening chapter, like the prologue or first chapter. Other than that, the rest of the book did not care for. Very controversial opinion among my friends. Next, I have the Han Solo Trilogy all in a one bind-up. This is the Han Solo Adventures, I should say, by Brian Daley. I don't own the other Han Solo Trilogy. Han Solo at Star's End, Han Solo's Revenge, and Han Solo and the Lost Legacy. I thought all of these books were meh. Just solid meh books. Did not love them, did not hate them. Just meh. All three. Then we have The Force Unleashed by Sean Williams. Really entertaining book. Don't remember too much about it. I played the video game anyway, and so if you're someone that you want to get the story, but you're not a gamer, this is actually pretty good because it condenses the game quite well. But it just doesn't feel too impressive, necessarily. It was a #1 New York Times bestseller. How? But it was a #1 New York Times bestseller. So, pretty impressive there. Next, I have The Lando Calrissian Adventures. I've read 2 of the 3 of these. Did not like either of the ones that I read, and so that's why I haven't really read the third one, because I just didn't feel excited by it. Then I have a very underrated book that needs to be talked about more, and Star Wars Theory actually gave this book a lot of discussions around the time that Kenobi came out, and that is Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. I thought this was a very good book. I don't put it on a pedestal that a lot of people did. I don't put it in the way that a lot of people viewed Obi-Wan, who's barely in this book, or Vader. I just think this is an entertaining read, one of the most entertaining reads. It's not that impressive in what it does, but it's like perfectly executed entertainment, if that's what you want your Star Wars book to be. So then I have 2 books on my shelves these are actually my brother-in-law's. He's letting me borrow them. Let me borrow them a long time ago, and I just never got around to reading them because I've had so many other books on my list. That's the MedStar Duology, Battle Surgeons, and Jedi Healer. I will get around to these eventually because I will read every Star Wars book before I die. At least Star Wars, let me rephrase that. Every Star Wars adult or young adult book before I die. I'd be reading forever if I included the little kids' books. But adult and young adult. And so these are on that list, but I just haven't gotten to them yet. Next, I have The Cestus Deception. Did not care for this book at all. I thought it was one of the most boring reads in Star Wars. I'm sorry. Also, another book that's going to get me in trouble. Shatterpoint. Didn't love it. This was the first Clone Wars novel. It even says, a Clone Wars novel. And I was like, yeah, a Clone Wars book. It even has a clone on the back. And there's no clones. I like the opening of the book, but I did not like what they did with Dibba Balaba. I did not like what they did with Mace in this book. I just did not like the story that well. You could have set this book pre the Clone Wars, just changed a few tiny details around. It would have worked much better. But it's like, don't promise me a Clone Wars book and then have no clones in it. I was so frustrated by this book. But I know a lot of people love it, so. Next, I have the Republic Commando books. Hard Contact, 000, and True Colors. I read Hard Contact, thought it was really entertaining. Read 000, thought it was fine, and just have not gotten to True Colors or the other Republic Commando books. This was a series that everyone hyped up. Oh, you gotta read the Republic Commando books. Karen Travis is one of the best Star Wars authors out there. And I thought it was fine, but it didn't grip me. But if you've noticed, I was really down on a lot of those books because a lot of the prequel era EU books did not work for me. But we're getting into the eras and books that really do work for me, that were really good. So, we have the X-Wing books. Some of my favorite Star Wars books ever. X-Wing Rogue Squadron, X-Wing Wedge's Gamble, X-Wing The Krytos Trap, and X-Wing The Back to War. Some of the best Star Wars books ever. Some of the most fun I've ever had reading Star Wars books, and some of the most nostalgia I have is for reading these books. These are amazing, amazing books. Then we have the Wraith Squadron books, Wraith Squadron, Iron Fist, and Solo Command. This trilogy is a trilogy. This set of 3 books is really good, but it just cannot compare to the greatness of the first 4 books. Like, Aaron Alston, may he rest in peace, did a great job. He was one of the most prolific Star Wars authors. Until Zahn started pumping out canon novels, Aaron Alston had the record for the most Star Wars books. And if we just say expanded universe adult novels, Aaron Alston still has the record at 13 novels, and that's probably not going to change, since they're probably not going to do more expanded universe books. So there's a reason he is in the accolades of Star Wars. I just think that when you compare him to someone like Michael Stackpole, I just think he just isn't as good. But as on his own, these books are actually a lot of fun to read. Next, I have the Bounty Hunter Wars, Mandalorian Armor, Slave Ship, and Hard Merchandise. This is one of those series that I'm just like, really? Really? Did not particularly care for it. There are moments in this book that work, and there are moments in these books. Like, I remember things, I read these fairly recently. I read these in 2020 during the whole lockdown situation. I enjoyed moments, but as a whole, I was very angry and disappointed with what K.W. Jeter did with this trilogy. And I thought that the Book of Boba Fett did everything that this trilogy tried to do, but better. And that's saying something, because Book of Boba Fett wasn't that good. Next, I have Shadows of the Empire, a book that I have a very tumultuous relationship with. I read the comic adaptation of Shadows of the Empire before I read any real Star Wars books, because a friend of mine at his house made me read it. Long story short, he made me read it. It was a lot of fun. And so I remembered the story. I remembered Shizor. I remembered Boba Fett. I remembered Luke and Leia trying to be seduced and all this stuff. And it was weird. And then I picked up the book. And as a book, it's actually a fun book. People like have a lot of nostalgia for this book, and there's a reason, because it's a fun book. But there's so many things in this book that make me go, what were you thinking? What were you thinking, Steve Perry? There's a lot of bad decisions in this book. But it's so entertaining, they kind of offset it. So that's those books. I'm going to go into a quick let me get, so I'm closer to being in order. My next book that I have is The Courtship of Princess Leia. Did not like this book, despite the fact that Dave Wolverton, also known as David Farland, is one of my favorite fantasy authors of all time. I thought that this book was a disappointment. Then I have the Thrawn Trilogy, Heir to the Empire, a #1 bestseller, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. This is a superb trilogy. This is very much not a hot take. Some of the best Star Wars books ever. Really well done. Like, there's a reason these books are so popular and so well liked. Then I have Darksaber. By Kevin J. Anderson. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. Just thought, okay, that was a read. I'm done with it now. Then I have X-Wing, Isard's Revenge. When Michael Stackpole jumped back in for one more X-Wing novel, and it was like, oh, yes! Lots of fun. Then we have the Jedi Academy trilogy. This is the Jedi Academy trilogy is to the Thrawn trilogy as the Wraith Squadron books are to the X-Wing books. This is an entertaining trilogy, and it's pretty well done. But you cannot compare with how well Zahn did with the original Thrawn trilogy. So that's why this book, series, trilogy, will always be overshadowed by the Thrawn trilogy. Although these books are all signed, so that's what's really cool. Next, I have some books that fell by accident. My apologies. I have I, Jedi by Michael Stackpole, one of the best Star Wars standalone books. Really caught me by surprise. The first Star Wars novel I read at college. And I'm going to duck out of frame real quick because one of my books fell, and that is Starfighters of Adjumar. If we're talking about just like this was like written as a standalone X-Wing novel. It is the best like standalone type X-Wing novel. Like on its own, brilliant type book, just brilliant. I wish they had kept that kind of series going. They did Mercy Kill later, which I haven't gotten to, but I wish they had just kept cranking them out, just doing fun little X-Wing books. That would have been a lot of fun. So next we're going to the Black Fleet Crisis books, Before the Storm, Shield of Lies, and Tyrant's Test. All three by Michael Q.B. McDowell. Why? Just why? Did not like this trilogy, did not like the choices made in the trilogy. Next I have the Corellian trilogy. Han Solo, what is this one? Ambush at Corellia. Really beat up copy, I apologize. And then I have Assault at Salonia and Showdown at Centerpoint. The world building of these three books, excellent. Everything else, not so much. This trilogy has the worst example of, oh, we need to put in Mara Jade. Boom. I was like, why? Why? Why is she here? It's not needed. And in fact, it would have made the whole EU better if she had not been here and she had shown up later. So I was like, why? Why you do this? All right. Next, we have my favorite EU series. Spectre of the Past, Vision of the Future, the two books in the Hand of the Thrawn duology. Love these books. If you say you only have one Star Wars series to keep, it's these two books. Actually, I would probably, in all honesty, probably pick the New Jedi Order because of how long it is, so how many books I get to keep. But, oh, I love these books. Oh, they're so good. So good. Next, I have Survivor's Quest. Very enjoyable, but one of the weaker Star Wars books by Zahn. And then I have my few copies. I thought at one point about buying the New Jedi Order books, and I could find them at bookstores and probably buy a lot of them, so it wouldn't be that hard. But I don't have to drive to at the moment because I don't really need it on my shelves. So I have Vector Prime, Hero's Trial, and Conquest. Conquest, one of my favorite books in the New Jedi Order. I actually did a ranking of my top 3 New Jedi Order books, and this was in the top 3. But I don't own really many of the more of them. Next, we have the little trilogy that was like a in-between trilogy. It's like, oh, let's just tell a weird bug story. That was The Joiner King, The Unseen Queen, and The Swarm War, all by Troy Denning. I actually thought these were pretty entertaining, but they're just largely forgettable. Like, I remembered the bugs, and I remembered some of the cool things that happened with each of the main characters and why they're in the position that they're in this book. Other than that, don't really remember much. It's a largely forgettable trilogy. Next, I have the Legacy of the Force series. And I don't know why I have Betrayal, the first book, hardcover. This is a paperback, but this was one that came out in hardcover. It was like the 10th. They did book 1, book 5, and book 9 in hardcover, but the rest they did exclusively in paperback. Weird decision. Just a weird decision. But this book started it out pretty solid. Actually, all of these have like a solid 7 out of 10 for me. They were all pretty good. Then you have Bloodline. Then you have Tempest. Then you have Fury. Then you have Sacrifice. Then you have Inferno. Then you have Exile. Then you have Revelation. And then I'll get to the 9th book in a second. The 9th book I do not have it in paperback. I have it hardcover. So that's all of those. Then we have some of my hardcovers I'll go through real quickly. I have a hardcover of Spectre of the Past, which is one of the shorter hardcovers. A weird one. I also have a hardcover of The Courtship of Princess Leia. Again, I don't really like this book, but I love this cover. Love the cover, despite did not liking the book. Then I have Lost Tribe of the Sith, the collected short stories. Really entertaining. Why didn't they do this more? Then I have my absolute all-time favorite Star Wars book. Like, there's no book ever coming close. Kenobi. Kenobi! So good! My favorite Star Wars novel. Then I have Scoundrels, a book that has like a weird fandom behind it. There's a weird niche of the fandom that just loves Scoundrels and just wanted more Scoundrels. And I'm like, I enjoyed it. If you want Scoundrels on TV, welcome to Andor. That's really funny that I'm talking about this while Andor's actually in the middle of Andor right now. But this book's pretty entertaining. I have an old, kind of tattered copy of Heir to the Empire that I found in hardcover. I wish I could get the whole trilogy. This isn't even a first printing, I don't think. If it is a first printing, this is probably worth some money. but it is tattered, so it's probably not worth that much. Then I have, as I promised, the hardcover of Rule of Two, and I also have a hardcover of Path of Destruction, which this is how I read Path of Destruction. I thought this book was good, this book was okay, and the third book was just meh. Then I have True Sith Bakura, a book everyone loves to hate, and I was like, it's not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad. But everyone loves to hate on it for some reason. And then I was talking about the Legacy of the Force, how I have all those books in paperback. The only one I only have in hardcover is Invincible. That's because I can't find the paperback of this anywhere. And I just wanted to finish the series. And it was a fairly bland ending. I have the Attack of the Clones novelization in hardcover. This was actually my brother's. I think he forgot that I own it now. I've had it for the last 5 years. But this was a better novelization than the Episode 1 novelization, even though I enjoyed Episode 1 more as a movie. Then I have Cloak of Deception, one of the most underrated Star Wars books. It's an amazing book. It does not get... I need to reread it just so I can talk about it on the channel, because it's an amazing, amazing, amazing book, and it makes some weird choices that I like, but most people don't. But it should be more rated. It should be rated higher. Then I have Rogue Planet, a book that was hyped for so long, and I was like, forgettable, and not particularly love it. The best part about this book is the ties to the New Jedi Order. Didn't do anything revolutionary. We need books in this era. Like, we need books like this. They just need to be better. But we need more books like that. Then I have a hardcover version of Phantom Menace. Then I have a hardcover version of Force Unleashed, which I already talked about. Then I have the Revenge of the Sith novelization, which I read a while ago. I don't remember much about it. Everyone else talks about, it's so amazing, and I'm like, I don't remember it. So I need to reread it. Then I have Labyrinth of Evil. That is a fine book. It's more hyped than I think it needs to be. Then I have some books I have not read yet. I have the Tales of books. I have Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina, Tales of the Jabba's Palace, and Tales of the Bounty Hunter. I have not read any of these yet. These are short story collections that I just haven't gotten to. But I got them because Kevin was having a big sale on his website, and I like to support Kevin Anderson because I'm a big fan of his. And I'm a completionist, and I want to have every book eventually. Next, I have The Young Jedi Knights. I was going through this little bookstore in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I used to live, and I found all 14 books together, just as a lot. Just boom, they were all there. And normally, like, I find 1 and 4 and 7, like, they're scattered around, and you'd be lucky to find them all. I found all of them right there in the bookstore, and I said, I'm going to get them. And I've already read most of them, but I still wanted to read them. These were some of the first Star Wars books I ever read, but I loved them. I loved these books. And also, these books were really cheap when I bought them as a lot. And so I will have to go... I'm going to flip them over so I can go through them faster. I have Heirs to the Force, an okay book. Shadow Academy, really entertaining. Lost Ones, most underrated book in the series. Lightsabers, this is the most praised book in the series, and there's a reason for it, because it's awesome. Then we have Darkest Night, entertaining. Jedi Under Siege, entertaining, but a little bit anticlimactic, but still entertaining. It works if you're a younger reader. Shards of Alderaan, which I have not read. Diversity Alliance, have not read. Jedi Bounty, surprisingly I have read this one. Don't remember much of it though. Delusions of Grandeur, I remember reading this and really enjoying it. Emperor's Plague, loved this one. It wraps up that whole series. Even though I didn't read the whole part of that series, it was still entertaining. Then I have Return to Ornamentel, didn't read. Trumbull on Cal City, a good book, but don't remember much. And then Crisis at Crystal Reef, have not read. So some of those I read and loved, some of them I thought were okay, and then some of them I just haven't read yet. And then finally, I have the most prized book in my possession. It's not my most pristine book, but it's the most prized book in my possession. and that is the German edition of Kenobi. Now you might say, why is that your most prized possession? Well, I am constantly looking for things for John to sign, because I keep going to cons that he's at, and he's my favorite Star Wars author, he's my favorite media tie-in fiction author, and I kept wanting to find things for him to sign. At the same time, I am studying German, and I wanted to read Kenobi in German, so I bought the book to try to read it. By the way, I need to read a lot. I need to learn a lot more German before I can read this book, because it's harder to do than you'd think. And I've been studying German for the better part of a year now. So I bought this book, and I still haven't read it in German. I've read, of course, the English version a bunch of times. And I brought this book to a convention, and John said, "Can I take a picture with this book?" And I said, "Yeah, it's your book." And he signed it, and he took a picture with me in the book, and he said, "I have never seen a German edition of Kenobi in person before." He said, "I've never gotten to sign one in person." He said he may have done some signatures where he signed some papers before they went to press or something like that, but he'd never held the German edition in his hands. He'd never seen it in person. And that story alone is worth the price of the book. And I love telling that story. So that's why this is my most prized book, because it's my favorite Star Wars novel mixed with an awesome story. So that is my Star Wars collection. All my EU books that I own. As I mentioned, there are some books that I've read that I just don't own, but that's all the ones I do own. And the ones I don't own that I've talked about are mostly the Clone Wars novels. There's the Fate of the Jedi I don't own, and then the New Jedi Order I've read but don't own, and then there's scattered here and there. But let me know, did you actually like that video? Was it way too long? It's a longer video than I normally produce. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.